Hello, people. I am Jyotsna, and you are listening to my podcast, Just Being Jyotsna. I hope you're doing well, and I know that it's been a really long time since I published my last episode, but here I am with the sixth episode of Just Being Jyotsna. Today, I'm gonna talk about internalized misogyny, which is a topic that I've wanted to cover for a really long time. What is internalized misogyny? Putting it in the simplest terms I can, it refers to women being prejudiced against and looking down upon women. When we speak of gender inequality and patriarchy, we do address the fact that women have been ridiculed, looked down upon, restricted, and oppressed. We mostly speak of men thinking of women as inferior and treating them accordingly, which is very important to address. But what happens when patriarchy takes such deep roots that women also start looking down upon each other and themselves? Before I speak any further of this, I need to make something very clear. I will most certainly not transfer any part of the blame for patriarchy on women, because even when women express internalized misogyny, they are still the victims of patriarchy. The prejudice and the notion that women are inferior has been imposed upon them so much that women tend to start believing it partially, if not completely. One form of internalized misogyny is accepting those stereotypes and deciding to live with them. The other form of it is when women do start believing in the inferiority of being feminine and try to feel better and break those chains by distancing themselves from it. They do this by distancing themselves from other women and distancing themselves from the things that are traditionally or rather stereotypically considered feminine, even forcefully. For example, let's take an example from my life. So, I, for instance, went through a whole phase where I pretended to not like pink. It would have been very different if I actually didn't like pink, but the thing is that I do like the color. So it means that I deliberately decided to not like pink. I decided to not like a color, which is a very stupid thing to do. But I did this because something had made me believe that liking pink was weak. So whenever I told someone that I didn't like pink, I felt like I was winning a war and rubbing it on their faces that I broke a stereotype. And on the other hand, I'd get really happy if I got to know that some boy liked pink. But this is so wrong on so many levels, right? And this thing is a very limited and small example, but it's a very good metaphor for the whole of internalized misogyny. So the stereotype here was that all girls like pink and that pink is feminine. It is, of course, not accurate, but in the absence of patriarchy, it would have been a very harmless stereotype, right? But because all that is feminine is considered inferior, liking pink is considered a weak trait. So we try to distance ourselves from it But when a guy liked pink, that made me happy or feel less worse about pink being considered feminine. That leaves very little to explain, right? It was after being in this phase for a very long time that I realized how wrong I was. And for the people who don't know, believe me that a lot of girls, at least a lot of girls around me, have gone through this oh my god, I don't like girly things phase. And it is one of the biggest examples of how patriarchy has been imposed upon everyone since childhood. And along with everything else, internalized misogyny has also been constantly glorified and imposed on women in a rather falsely flattering manner. Okay, so what I mean by a falsely flattering manner, you'll get as I explain the next part of this. So, have you noticed how in a lot of movies the supporting female actors are made to wear more revealing clothes than the female lead? I mean, I'm not speaking of one movie or one song, I'm speaking of a pattern in Bollywood movies and songs. So, first, they are subtly reinforcing the notion that the clothes a woman wears, the type of clothes, or how revealing the clothes are. So, basically, the clothes a woman wears define them. They are subtly reinforcing that very sexist notion. And second, they are making the female lead stand out by showing them as being different from all the other women. Different, I made air quotes when I said different. There, that is internalized misogyny, according to me. Bollywood is one thing. Like, Bollywood has been misogynistic for a really long time, and that is a well known fact. But there are taints of internalized misogyny in the works that are actually considered as strong feminist works. To take one example from literature, it's Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. So, the character of Elizabeth Bennet, the major female lead in the story, is established as a strong, progressive, feminist one, right? But this is established by portraying all the women surrounding her, including her mother and sisters, as shallow, dumb, and silly. So this raises the question that is it necessary that in order to picture a strong, feminist, progressive female character, does the woman have to be surrounded by shallow, stereotypical ones? That also, according to me, is an example of internalized misogyny. So, the third one is that I've seen a lot of girls being proud of the fact that they only have male friends. And I have seen considerably less men or boys so proudly saying that they only have female friends. And this is also repeatedly reinforced by movies and books, by portrayal of women as envious and dramatic, and being and telling a girl that you're one of the guys or telling her that you're not like other women is considered as a compliment. But on the bright side, I have seen that a lot of women and girls around me have been trying to bust this thing and have been repeatedly crying out that that is not a compliment. But it still exists, so I had to point it out over here. And all this does is provide comfort to the misogynists and strengthens all the notions that have been put forth by patriarchy in all these years. So, when we talk about internalized misogyny, it rises from the rigid notions of what is masculine and what is feminine, and the idea that masculinity is superior. According to me, having and imposing rigid ideas of what is masculine behavior and what is feminine behavior itself is extremely sexist. So, of course, there is no question about having these notions and also having a notion about one of them being superior. What I'm trying to say is that the concept of feminism is not at all about changing the way a person of any gender behaves, right? I mean, of course, it involves changing the way misogynists behave, but what I mean is that feminism is about being treated equally, irrespective of one's gender. It is about acceptance, and it is about letting people behave however they want and make whatever choices they want to, irrespective of what their gender is. So, internalized misogyny is as equally important to fight against as any other effect of patriarchy or any other branch of patriarchy and misogyny. I think that is all I have to say about this for now. And yes, off topic, I wanted to read out a poem in this episode. I've been reading quite a bit of Faiz Ahmad Faiz nowadays, and there was this poem that I wanted to read out here. So here goes. बोल के लब आज़ाद हैं तेरे, बोल ज़बान अब तक तेरी है, तेरा सुतवा जिस्म है तेरा, बोल के जान अब तक तेरी है. बोल ये थोड़ा वक्त बहुत है जिस्मो ज़बां की मौत से पहले, बोल के सच जिंदा है अब तक, बोल जो कुछ कहना है कह ले. And with that, we come to the end of today's episode. So take care, bye bye.